The blade came down fast. Hunter Cole saw it, silver edge-cutting moonlight, aimed at his throat, and his body moved before his mind could catch up. He threw himself sideways into wet leaves, breath tearing out of his lungs, and the assassin's sword buried itself 2 inches into the oak tree where his head had been a heartbeat ago. He didn't stop to think. He ran. Branches whipped his face. Roots tried to trip him. Behind him, 3 sets of footsteps pounded through the forest, and he could hear their voices, low, professional, unbothered. They weren't even rushing. They knew he was nothing. Knew he couldn't fight back. Knew the weakest disciple of the dying Cole clan would collapse in another 100 yards, and then they'd finish the job and collect whatever the Hale clan was paying for his corpse. Hunter's lungs screamed. His legs burned. His vision blurred with exhaustion and terror, and the only thought in his head was the same one he'd carried for 5 years. I'm not strong enough. I'm not strong enough. I'm not strong enough. The cliff appeared out of nowhere. 1 second he was running through trees. The next, the ground vanished beneath his feet and he was falling, arms flailing, mouth open in a silent scream as the world spun and darkness swallowed him whole. He hit stone. Hard. Pain exploded through his shoulder and ribs, and he rolled, tumbling down a steep incline of broken rock and ancient rubble until he slammed into a wall and finally stopped, gasping, vision swimming with stars. For a moment, he couldn't move. Couldn't think. Could only lie there in the dark, tasting blood, wondering if he'd broken something vital. Then he heard voices above. Did he fall? Must have. Cliff's got to be 40 feet. Check it? A pause. Then, not worth it. Even if he survived the drop, he'll bleed out down there. Hale wanted him dead. He's dead. Footsteps retreated. Hunter lay perfectly still, heart hammering, until the sounds faded completely. Then he let out a shaking breath and forced himself to sit up, wincing as his ribs protested. Nothing felt broken. Badly bruised, definitely, but not broken. He was alive. For now. He blinked, letting his eyes adjust to the darkness, and slowly realized he wasn't in a natural cave. The walls around him were too smooth. Too deliberate. Carved stone, not erosion. And there, barely visible in the faint moonlight filtering down from above, was a doorway. No. Not a doorway. An entrance. Hunter pulled himself to his feet, swaying, one hand pressed against his ribs. Every instinct told him to stay put. Wait for dawn. Climb back up carefully and make his way home. But home was 3 hours away on foot, and he was injured, and there was no guarantee those assassins wouldn't come back to make sure. And something about the entrance pulled at him. Called to him. He stepped forward. The passage was narrow, walls pressing close on either side, and the air grew colder as he moved deeper. His footsteps echoed strangely, as if the space ahead was larger than it should be. And then the passage opened up, and Hunter stopped dead. It wasn't a ruin. Not really. Just a single chamber, maybe 20 feet across, carved from black stone that seemed to drink the light. In the center sat a cracked altar, and on that altar, covered in dust and cobwebs, was a ring. Just a ring. Black metal, simple band, no ornamentation. The kind of thing a peasant might wear. The kind of thing no one would look at twice. But it was glowing. Faintly. So faintly Hunter almost thought he'd imagined it. A soft pulse of silver-white light, like a dying ember struggling to stay lit. He should have run. Should have turned around and climbed back out and never spoken of this place to anyone. But his legs carried him forward anyway, drawn by something he couldn't name, and before he knew what he was doing, his hand was reaching out. The moment his fingers touched the ring, light exploded through his vision. Not painful. Not overwhelming. Just, sudden. Like stepping from a dark room into noon sun. And with the light came understanding, flowing into his mind like water into a cup, filling spaces he hadn't known were empty. The ring was a refining tool. Ancient beyond measure. Designed by someone whose name had been lost to time, built for a single purpose, to purify. To improve. To transform. It could take broken things and make them whole. Crude things and make them refined. Weak things and make them strong. It could change everything. And it had chosen him not because he was special, but because he was desperate enough to use it correctly. Because he was broken enough to need it. Because he was alone enough to keep it secret. The light faded. Hunter stood in the dark chamber, ring clutched in his fist, breathing hard. His mind raced. This was impossible. Things like this didn't happen. Ancient treasures didn't just appear in random ruins beneath random cliffs. Divine inheritances didn't fall into the laps of talentless disciples who couldn't even reach foundation establishment after 5 years of trying. But the knowledge was there. Solid. Real. Undeniable. And underneath it all, Threading through every piece of understanding the ring had given him, was a single warning that rang like a bell in his skull. Tell no one. Trust no one. If they discover what you have, they will kill you for it. Hunter closed his eyes. Took a breath. Slipped the ring onto his finger. It fit perfectly. The climb back up the cliff took an hour. His ribs protested every movement, and twice he nearly lost his grip and fell, but eventually he dragged himself over the edge and collapsed in the wet grass, gasping. Dawn was breaking. Pale light filtered through the trees, turning the forest gray and ghostly. He needed to get home. Needed to clean his wounds. Needed to think. But first. Hunter pulled a cracked dagger from his belt. Standard issue from the clan armory. Blade chipped in 3 places, handle wrapped in fraying leather, balance off center. The kind of weapon you gave to someone who didn't matter. He turned it over in his hands, studying it, and then, carefully, channeled a thread of chi into the ring. The reaction was immediate. The ring grew warm against his finger, and the dagger began to glow. Not bright. Not obvious. Just a faint shimmer, like heat haze, as impurities burned away and the metal restructured itself at a level too small to see. Chips smoothed over. Balance corrected. Edge sharpened to a line so fine it could split silk. 10 seconds later, the glow faded. Hunter stared at the weapon in his hand. It looked almost the same. Same size, same general shape. But the weight was different now. Better. And when he tested the edge against his thumb, it drew blood with barely any pressure. This was real. This was actually real. He stood up, legs shaking, and started walking home. The Cole clan compound sat on the eastern edge of Green River Province, nestled against low hills that used to provide natural defense before the clan grew too weak to man the watchtowers properly. 50 years ago, it had been a place of power. Now it was a collection of worn buildings, cracked walls, and exhausted people trying to survive one more season. Hunter slipped through the back gate just as the morning bell rang, moving quickly through empty courtyards toward the disciples' quarters. If he was lucky, no one would notice he'd been gone. If he was unlucky. Hunter. He froze. Arya Cole stood in the doorway of the training hall, arms crossed, expression unreadable. She was 3 years older than him, built like a sword, all lean muscle and sharp edges, and the strongest young warrior the clan had left. Her cultivation had reached core formation 2 months ago, a feat that should have made her a prize for any major sect, but she'd stayed. Stayed because the clan needed her. Stayed because unlike most of the others, she still believed they could survive. Where were you? She asked. Hunter kept his voice steady. Couldn't sleep. Went for a walk. With assassins hunting our borders? I didn't know they were out there. She studied him for a long moment, gaze sharp enough to cut, and Hunter forced himself not to fidget. Not to touch the ring. Not to give anything away. Finally, Arya sighed. You're bleeding. I fell. You fell. It was dark. Another long silence. Then, Elder Rowan's in the medical hall. Get yourself checked. And Hunter? She met his eyes. Be more careful. We can't afford to lose anyone else. She walked away before he could respond. Hunter exhaled slowly and headed for his room. The disciples' quarters were cramped, 8 people to a building, thin walls, no privacy. But at this hour, most were already at morning training, which meant Hunter had the space to himself. He locked the door, stripped off his torn robe, and examined the damage. Bruises covered his shoulder and ribs. Scrapes crisscrossed his arms. Nothing serious, but enough to hurt. He cleaned the worst of it with water from a basin, then sat on his bed and stared at the ring on his finger. What was he supposed to do with this? The knowledge it had given him was clear: the ring could refine materials, purify chi, upgrade items over time. But it wasn't unlimited. It needed his energy to function. Overuse would drain him. And most importantly, it couldn't create something from nothing. It could only improve what already existed. Which meant he needed materials to work with. Hunter's gaze drifted to the corner of the room, where a small pile of discarded items sat gathering dust. Things other disciples had thrown away. A cracked pill bottle. Torn cloth. Bent nails. A chunk of low grade or someone had bought and then decided wasn't worth the effort of refining. Trash, basically. But trash could become treasure. Hunter picked up the ore first. Rough gray stone, maybe 2 pounds, riddled with impurities. The kind of thing you'd sell for a few copper coins if you could find someone desperate enough to buy it. He held it in one hand, channeled chi into the ring, and watched as the stone began to glow. The process took longer than the dagger. A full minute of steady energy flow, and by the end Hunter was breathing hard, sweat beading on his forehead. But when the light faded, the ore had changed. Impurities burned away. Color shifted to silver-white. Weight reduced by half as waste material vanished. What remained was pure iron ore, high grade, worth at least 20 silver pieces to the right merchant. Hunter set it down carefully and picked up the torn cloth. By the time the morning sun cleared the hills, he'd refined everything in the pile. Ore upgraded. Cloth repaired and strengthened. Pill bottle sealed and purified. Bent nails straightened and hardened. And his own chi reserves were completely empty, exhaustion settling into his bones like lead. But he was smiling. Because for the first time in 5 years, he had a path forward. For the first time since his parents died and left him powerless and alone, he had something that could change everything. He just had to be smart about it. Hunter spent the rest of the day recovering. His ribs ached, but Elder Rowan had given him ointment and told him to rest, so he stayed in his room and thought. The problem was obvious: he had a tool that could make the clan wealthy and powerful, but using it openly would paint a target on his back large enough to be seen from the capital. Every sect, every clan, every cultivator with ambition would come for the ring the moment they learned it existed. So no one could ever know. Which meant he needed a cover story. A reason for sudden improvements. A plausible explanation that wouldn't raise suspicion. The answer came to him that evening, watching merchants pack up their stalls in the compound's market square. He'd sell the refined items as normal goods. Claim he'd found them cheap, or bought them from traveling traders, or salvaged them from abandoned sites. The clan was poor enough that anyone finding a good deal would be seen as lucky, not suspicious. And if he was careful, if he spread the sales out, varied his sources, kept his profits modest, no one would look too closely. It was risky. But everything was risky now. Hunter waited 3 days before making his first sale. 3 days of refining items in secret, building up a small stockpile of upgraded materials. Then, on market day, he approached a merchant he'd dealt with before, an older man named Chen who bought and sold general goods and didn't ask too many questions. "Morning, Chen." The merchant looked up from his ledger. "Hunter. What can I do for you?" Hunter pulled a small cloth bundle from his bag and unwrapped it, revealing 5 iron nails. Perfectly straight. Perfectly balanced. Each one refined to the point where they could pierce hardwood without bending. Chen picked one up, studied it, tested the weight. His eyebrows rose. "Where'd you get these?" "Found them in an old storage building near the eastern wall. Previous owners must have left them behind." Chen examined another nail. "Quality's good." "Very good. I'll give you 3 silver for the lot." 5. 4. Deal. The transaction took 30 seconds. Chen handed over 4 silver pieces, Hunter pocketed them and walked away, heart racing. 4 silver wasn't much, not compared to what wealthier disciples spent on pills and techniques, but for someone like him, it was a fortune. More than he'd earned in the past 3 months combined. And it was just the beginning. Over the next 2 weeks, Hunter established a pattern. Every few days, he'd sell something small to a different merchant. Refined cloth. Purified medicine herbs. High-grade ore. Never enough to draw attention. Never to the same person twice in a row. And always with a plausible story about where he'd found it. The silver began to accumulate. And with silver came options. The first thing Hunter bought was proper healing supplies. Not for himself, for the clan. Elder Rowan's medical hall was running low on everything, and people were suffering for it. So Hunter purchased pills and ointments from traveling merchants, claiming he'd saved up his allowance, and quietly delivered them to the elder with instructions to use them however he saw fit. Rowan had looked at him strangely but accepted the gift without question. The second thing Hunter bought was information. He paid street runners and gossipmongers for news about rival clans, sect movements, beast activity in the region. Knowledge was power, and the more he knew about the threats facing the clan, the better he could prepare. The third thing. "You've been busy." Hunter looked up from his meal to find Arya standing over his table in the disciples' dining hall. She sat down across from him without waiting for an invitation, eyes sharp. "Heard you've been selling things," she said. "Making some silver." Hunter kept his expression neutral. "Finding things, mostly. Old storage rooms have a lot of forgotten items." "Right." She leaned back. "You know, it's funny. Ever since you started selling, the medical hall's been better stocked. Training weapons have been getting replaced. Even the kitchens had better food. Almost like someone's been contributing anonymously. Maybe someone is. Is it you?" Hunter met her gaze. "Would it matter?" Arya studied him for a long moment, and something shifted in her expression. Not suspicion. Something softer. Almost like respect. "The elders are noticing," she said quietly. "They don't know who's behind it, but they're grateful. Keep it up, and you might actually make something of yourself." She stood and walked away, leaving Hunter alone with his thoughts. That night, he refined his first batch of pills. The process was delicate. Pills were more complex than raw materials, more variables, more room for error. But the ring's knowledge guided him through it, showing him how to channel energy precisely, how to purify without destroying, how to transform grade 2 healing pills into grade 3 with nothing but patience and chi. It took 4 hours. By the end, Hunter was exhausted, barely able to stand. But sitting on his desk were 6 perfect pills, each one glowing faintly with concentrated medicinal energy, worth 50 silver apiece on the open market. 300 silver total. Enough to change everything. Hunter stared at them for a long time, thinking. Then he carefully wrapped 5 in cloth, left one for himself, and went to find Elder Rowan. The physician was still awake, working by candlelight in his cluttered office. He looked up when Hunter entered, surprise flickering across his weathered face. "Hunter. It's late." "I know." Hunter hesitated, then placed the wrapped bundle on the desk. "I found these. Thought you might need them." Rowan unwrapped the cloth slowly. Froze. Picked up one pill, held it to the light, examined it with the kind of intensity only a true expert could manage. His hands trembled slightly. "Where did you get these?" "Traveling merchant." He didn't know what they were, sold them cheap. "Cheap?" Rowan's voice was barely a whisper. "These are grade 3 healing pills. Do you have any idea what they're worth?" "Some." "Then why bring them to me instead of selling them?" Hunter met the old man's eyes. "Because people need them more than I need silver." Silence stretched between them. Then Rowan set the pill down carefully and looked at Hunter with an expression the young disciple couldn't quite read. "Pride, maybe. Or sorrow. Or both. Your parents would be proud of you," the elder said quietly. Hunter's throat tightened. He nodded once and left before the emotion could show on his face. 2 weeks later, everything changed. The Hale clan attacked at dawn. Not a full assault, they weren't stupid enough to provoke a war with the other provincial clans. But a raid. 30 cultivators, all foundation establishment or higher, hitting the eastern wall with enough force to punch through the weakened defenses and make off with supplies before the Cole clan could properly respond. Hunter heard the alarm bells and ran for the armory. The compound was chaos. Disciples scrambling for weapons. Elders shouting orders. Civilians fleeing toward the central buildings. And at the wall, flashes of light as techniques clashed and steel rang against steel. Hunter grabbed a spear, newly refined, though no one knew it, and raced toward the fighting. He'd never been in real combat before. Every instinct screamed at him to run, to hide, to let the stronger disciples handle it. But he thought of Elder Rowan's medical supplies running out. Thought of the clan's children going hungry. Thought of Arya standing alone against enemies she couldn't defeat because there weren't enough warriors left to support her. And he ran faster. The eastern wall was a nightmare. Hale cultivators poured through a gap in the stone, weapons flashing, chi techniques lighting the air. Cole disciples fought back desperately, but they were outnumbered and outmatched. Blood stained the ground. Bodies lay still. Hunter saw Arya at the center of it all, sword moving like lightning, holding back 3 enemies at once. But she was tiring. He could see it in the way her movement slowed, the way her defensive technique flickered. She couldn't hold forever. Hunter didn't think. He just moved. A Hale cultivator broke through the line, blade raised to strike a wounded Cole disciple from behind. Hunter threw himself forward, spear extended, and, miracle of miracles, the strike landed. Refined metal punched through the attacker's guard and drove him back, startled. The man turned, saw Hunter, and laughed. "Foundation establishment?" He sneered. "Not even that. You're what, second stage chi gathering? Get out of here, kid. You're going to get yourself killed." He launched a palm strike, casual, dismissive, barely a fraction of his real power. And Hunter, operating on pure instinct, channeled chi into the ring. The palm strike hit him square in the chest. Should have shattered his ribs. Should have killed him instantly. But the ring flared, and suddenly the hostile chi was being absorbed, refined, converted into pure energy that flooded Hunter's meridians and something cracked inside him. Not painfully. Not destructively. But like a door being kicked open. Like a dam breaking. Years of bottleneck cultivation suddenly surging forward, chi channels expanding, foundation solidifying, and in the space between one heartbeat and the next, Hunter broke through to foundation establishment. The Hale cultivator's eyes went wide. Hunter drove his spear forward with strength he'd never possessed before and took the man clean through the shoulder. The cultivator screamed, stumbled back, and fled. Around them, the tide of battle shifted. Arya rallied the defenders. The Hale clan, realizing they were taking more losses than expected, began to retreat. Within minutes, the raid was over. Hunter stood among the wounded and the dead, breathing hard, spear still clutched in trembling hands. He'd broken through. After 5 years of failure, 5 years of being the weakest disciple, he'd finally reached foundation establishment. And no one could ever know how. The aftermath was brutal. 12 cold disciples dead. 20 wounded. The eastern wall damaged beyond quick repair. But they'd held. Barely. And the Hale clan had lost enough people that they wouldn't try again anytime soon. Arya found Hunter in the medical hall, helping Elder Rowan treat the injured. "You broke through," she said. Hunter nodded, not looking up from the bandage he was wrapping. "In the middle of combat. Fear does strange things. That's not how cultivation works." She stepped closer, voice dropping. "What happened out there, Hunter? How did you?" "I don't know." He met her eyes, and for once he wasn't lying. He genuinely didn't understand half of what the ring had done. "I just broke through. That's all." Arya studied him for a long moment. Then nodded slowly. "All right. But whatever it was, you saved Lou's life out there. He won't forget that. None of us will." She left. Hunter finished the bandage, then quietly slipped another refined pill to Elder Rowan when no one was looking. That night, alone in his room, Hunter sat cross-legged and meditated. Foundation establishment felt different. Stronger. More stable. His chi moved through his meridians with a smoothness he'd never experienced, and the ring on his finger pulsed faintly in time with his heartbeat. He could feel it now. Really feel it. The connection between himself and the artifact. The way it responded to his intent, the way it guided his energy, the way it whispered possibilities in the back of his mind. With this, he could help the clan survive. With this, he could grow strong enough to protect the people he cared about. With this, he could become someone who mattered. But only if he stayed smart. Only if he stayed hidden. Only if he never, ever let anyone discover the truth. Hunter opened his eyes and looked at the pile of materials waiting to be refined. Then he got to work. The weeks that followed established a rhythm. Hunter refined items in secret, sold them carefully, funneled resources back into the clan under dozens of different pretexts. And slowly, so slowly no one could point to a specific moment when it happened, things began to improve. The medical hall received better supplies. Training weapons stopped breaking. Food quality increased. Defensive formations were repaired. And Hunter's own cultivation progressed at a pace that seemed fast but not impossible. Foundation establishment 3rd stage. 4th stage. 5th. Each breakthrough explained away as the result of hard work, lucky encounters, or natural talent finally manifesting. People started to notice him. Not as the weakest disciple anymore. As someone competent. Someone useful. Someone worth paying attention to. Arya began including him in strategy discussions. Elder Rowan asked his opinion on medicine purchases. Even the clan patriarch, distant, exhausted, barely holding everything together, nodded to him in passing one day. It was working. And then a merchant girl named Lian May walked into his life and changed everything again. She appeared in the market square on a warm afternoon, setting up a stall with practiced efficiency. Hunter noticed her because she was new. Merchants rotated through the province regularly, but he made it his business to know who was selling what, and because she had the kind of sharp, assessing gaze that suggested she didn't miss much. He approached casually. "New to Green River?" She glanced up, taking in his Cole clan robes, his age, his foundation establishment cultivation. "Just passing through." "You interested in buying or just making conversation?" "Depends what you're selling." "Medicines, mainly. Some raw materials." "Why, you in the market for something specific?" Hunter pulled out a small pouch. Inside were 3 pieces of refined ore he'd been planning to sell elsewhere. "Actually, I was hoping you might be buying." Lian May took the pouch, examined the contents, and her eyebrows rose incrementally. "This is high-grade stuff. Where'd you get it?" "Salvage mostly. I've got a good eye for undervalued materials." "Clearly." She set the pouch down. "I'll give you 30 silver for the lot." 40. 35. "Deal." The transaction completed, Lian May studied him with renewed interest. "You do this often? Find quality materials that other people miss?" "When I can." "Interesting." She pulled out a small jade token, pressed it into his hand. "If you find more, and I mean quality stuff, not junk, send word through that token. I pay fair prices, and I don't ask unnecessary questions." Hunter looked at the token, then at her. Understanding passed between them. She knew he was onto something. Didn't know what, didn't care, but recognized opportunity when she saw it. "I'll keep that in mind," he said. 3 days later, he sent word through the token. Lian Mei met him at a tea house outside the compound with a leather bag full of silver and a business proposal that made Hunter's heart race. She wanted to partner with him. Long term. She'd provide capital and distribution channels. He'd provide materials. They'd split profits 60-40 in her favor until he'd built up enough capital to renegotiate, and in exchange, she'd handle all the risky parts, transportation, sales to bigger buyers, dealing with sect politics. It was perfect. It was dangerous. It was exactly what he needed. One condition, Hunter said. No one knows where I'm sourcing materials. Not your contacts, not your buyers. No one. Lian Mei smiled. I already told you I don't ask unnecessary questions. Your sources are your business. I just want to make money. They shook hands. And Hunter's secret business began. Over the next month, everything accelerated. Lian Mei's network opened doors Hunter couldn't have reached alone. Refined pills went to wealthy cultivators in the provincial capital. Upgraded weapons sold to minor sects. Purified medicines reached hospitals and healing halls across 3 provinces. Silver poured in. Then gold. Hunter funneled most of it back into the clan, anonymously when possible, through carefully constructed excuses when not. The Cole clan's fortunes improved week by week. Not dramatically. Not suspiciously. But steadily, undeniably. And people began to wonder. Elder Rowan was the first to voice it, during a late-night conversation in the medical hall. Hunter, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest. Where is all this coming from? Hunter had prepared for this moment. I've been fortunate. Found some good sources. Made some smart trades. That's not an answer. It's the only one I have. The old physician sighed. You're hiding something. I don't know what, and maybe I don't want to know. But whatever it is, be careful. Fortune that comes too easily tends to attract the wrong kind of attention. I know. Do you? Rowan leaned forward. Because the Hale clan is already asking questions. And the Ironblood sect sent an envoy last week specifically to investigate why our clan is suddenly prospering when we should be collapsing. They're watching us, Hunter. Watching you. I settled in Hunter's stomach. What do you mean, watching me? You've been noticed. Your breakthrough during the raid. Your contributions to the clan. Your mysterious good fortune. People are connecting dots, and some of those people are dangerous. Hunter sat back, mind racing. He'd been careful. So careful. But careful wasn't the same as invisible, and the more successful he became, the more attention he'd naturally draw. He needed to be smarter. Needed better cover. Needed. The answer hit him like lightning. He needed to become legitimate. Not just a lucky disciple who found good deals. But someone with real authority. Real responsibility. Someone whose success would be expected rather than suspicious. He needed to become the young master. The position had been empty since the previous young master died in a sect war 3 years ago. The patriarch had never named a replacement, too exhausted and broken to deal with the politics of succession. But if Hunter could prove himself valuable enough, if he could demonstrate leadership, strategic thinking, and genuine contribution to the clan's survival, maybe he could claim the role before anyone looked too closely at how he'd gotten there. It was audacious. Borderline insane. He was 19 years old, barely Foundation Establishment 6th stage, and until recently had been considered the weakest disciple in the compound. But he had something no one else had. He had a plan. And he had a secret that could make anything possible. Hunter stood, bowed to Elder Rowan. Thank you for the warning. I'll be more careful. See that you are. The clan needs you alive more than it needs you wealthy. Hunter left the medical hall and walked straight to Arya's quarters. She answered his knock looking exhausted, hair tied back, fresh bandages on one arm from training. Hunter? It's late. I know. I need to talk to you about the clan's future. Something in his tone made her step aside and let him in. They talked until dawn. Hunter laid out everything he'd observed, not the ring, never the ring, but the strategic situation. The Hale clan's pressure. The Ironblood sect's interest. The slow erosion of the Cole clan's position in the province. And his proposal, consolidate resources, strengthen defenses, build alliances with merchant groups, and position someone to take over the young master role who could navigate the political landscape ahead. Arya listened without interrupting. When he finished, she was quiet for a long time. You're talking about yourself, she finally said. I'm talking about whoever can do the job. You want to be young master. I want the clan to survive. If that means taking the position, yes. Arya studied him with those sharp eyes that seemed to see through everything. A month ago, you were nobody. Now your foundation establishment 6th stage, contributing more resources than disciples twice your age, and proposing political maneuvers like you've been studying strategy for years. What changed, Hunter? I got tired of being weak. That's not. It is. Hunter met her gaze steadily. I got tired of watching people suffer because I couldn't help them. So I stopped being useless. That's all. Another long silence. Then Arya nodded slowly. All right. I'll support your candidacy. But Hunter? If you're hiding something dangerous, it's going to come out eventually. And when it does, I need to know you'll prioritize the clan over whatever secret you're keeping. Always, Hunter said. And meant it. 2 weeks later, at the monthly clan assembly, Patriarch Cole made an announcement that sent shockwaves through the compound. He was naming a new young master. Hunter Cole. Youngest candidate in 30 years. Least experienced. Most surprising choice in living memory. The Patriarch's reasoning was simple: contribution. In 3 months, Hunter had done more for the clan than most disciples managed in 3 years. His strategic mind, his resource management, his ability to find opportunities where others saw only problems, these were exactly the qualities the clan needed to survive. Not everyone agreed. Some elders protested. Some disciples grumbled. But Arya stood beside Hunter during the announcement, and her support carried weight. And when the votes were counted, the decision stood. Hunter Cole was young master of the Cole clan. That night, alone in his new quarters, larger room, better location, still modest but undeniably significant, Hunter sat at his desk and looked at the ring on his finger. 3 months ago, he'd been running for his life through a dark forest, convinced he was about to die. Now he was young master. And no one, not Arya, not Elder Rowan, not the Patriarch, not the Hale clan, not the Ironblood sect, had any idea that his rise had been built on a secret powerful enough to shake the cultivation world to its foundations. The ring pulsed softly against his skin. Hunter smiled. This was just the beginning. Outside his window, storm clouds gathered on the horizon. In the distance, lightning flickered. And somewhere in the darkness, forces he couldn't yet see began to move, drawn by the scent of power and the promise of secrets waiting to be discovered. But Hunter Cole had spent his entire life being underestimated. Let them come. He'd be ready. The Ironblood sect envoy arrived on a clear morning 3 weeks after Hunter's appointment as young master, and everything about his entrance was designed to remind the Cole clan exactly how small they were. 12 cultivators. All core formation or higher. Flying on spirit cranes that circled the compound twice before landing in the main courtyard, their shadows passing over buildings like omens. At their center rode a man in crimson robes embroidered with black iron patterns, his cultivation pressure so thick it made the air feel heavy. Hunter stood at the compound gates with Arya and Elder Rowan, watching the display with a carefully neutral expression while his mind raced through calculations. The envoy was Elder Shen, same man who'd visited 3 weeks ago asking polite questions about the clan's sudden prosperity. Back then, he'd been subtle. Careful. Probing for weaknesses without showing his hand. This wasn't subtle. This was a declaration. Elder Shen dismounted with practiced grace, his spirit crane dissolving into mist behind him. He was perhaps 50 years old, though with cultivators that meant nothing. Could be 150 for all Hunter knew. Sharp features, calculating eyes, and a smile that never quite reached them. Young Master Cole, Shen said, voice carrying across the courtyard. Congratulations on your appointment. The Ironblood sect was delighted to hear of your rise. Hunter bowed, exactly the depth protocol demanded and not an inch more. Elder Shen. Your presence honors us. Indeed. Shen's gaze swept the compound, taking in every detail. The repaired walls. The well-fed disciples. The subtle improvements that marked a clan recovering from near collapse. You've done remarkable work here. In mere months, you've accomplished what your predecessors failed to achieve in years. Quite impressive for one so young. The words were praise. The tone was accusation. The clan's success belongs to everyone, Hunter said carefully. I simply helped coordinate our efforts. Shen smiled that empty smile again. We should talk privately. There's a matter of some importance to discuss. It wasn't a request. Hunter led the envoy to the clan's main hall, a building that had seen better decades. The roof leaked. The floor was uneven. But it was the most formal space they had, and refusing would have been an insult the Cole clan couldn't afford. Arya and Elder Rowan followed. Hunter wanted them there. Witnesses mattered, and if this conversation went where he suspected, he'd need people who understood the stakes. They settled around a low table. A servant brought tea that was probably too cheap for someone of Shen's status, but the elder accepted it with exaggerated graciousness. Another calculated message, The Ironblood sect could afford to slum with lesser clans. Young Master Cole, Shen began, setting down his cup. The Ironblood sect has been watching your development with great interest. Your breakthrough during combat. Your strategic acumen. Your ability to locate and acquire valuable resources. These are talents we value highly. Here it comes, Hunter thought. To that end, Sect Master Feng has authorized me to extend an invitation. We would like you to join the Ironblood sect as an outer disciple, with immediate advancement to honorary elder status upon acceptance. You would receive access to our techniques, our cultivation resources, and our protection. In return, you would serve as a liaison between the sect and the Cole clan, ensuring cooperation and mutual prosperity. The silence that followed was deafening. Arya's hand moved toward her sword. Elder Rowan's face went pale. And Hunter sat perfectly still, expression arranged into something between surprise and gratitude while his mind tore through the implications at lightning speed. This wasn't an invitation. It was a leash. Accept, and he'd be bound by sect politics, his every action monitored, his resources controlled. The Cole clan would become a vassal in all but name, their fortunes tied to Ironblood whims. Refuse, and the sect would take it as an insult. Pressure would increase. The Hale clan would be given tacit permission to escalate. Within months, the Cole clan would be destroyed. Either way, they lost their independence. Unless he was very, very careful. Elder Shen, Hunter said slowly, this is an incredible honor. The Ironblood sect's reputation is legendary throughout the province. To be offered such an opportunity. He let genuine emotion creep into his voice. Not greed. Not ambition. Something softer. I'm overwhelmed. Shen's smile widened fractionally. Then you accept? I would be a fool to refuse outright. But I must ask for time to prepare. The Cole clan has just begun to stabilize, and my duties as young master are extensive. To abandon them suddenly would undo much of our recent progress. If the sect could grant me, say, 3 months to ensure a smooth transition. 2 weeks. The counter came instantly, without negotiation. Shen's eyes glittered. Your dedication to your clan is admirable, young Master Cole. But the Ironblood sect's offer will not remain open indefinitely. 2 weeks to conclude your affairs here. After that, we expect you at the sect compound for your initiation ceremony. Hunter bowed his head, the picture of a young cultivator overwhelmed by forces beyond his control. 2 weeks. Of course. Thank you for your generosity, Elder Shen. Excellent. Shen stood, smoothing his robes. We'll send a contract jade within 3 days. Standard terms, loyalty oaths, resource sharing agreements, territorial acknowledgements. Nothing onerous, I assure you. Simply the usual formalities. He left with the same theatrical display he'd arrived with, spirit cranes materializing from mist, cultivators launching into the sky in perfect formation. Within minutes, they were gone. The moment they disappeared over the hills, Arya exploded. Absolutely not. You're not going anywhere with those vultures. This is a trap, Hunter. They want to control us through you. We'd rather die than. Arya. Hunter's voice cut through her anger like a blade. Sit down. She stared at him, furious, but something in his tone made her hesitate. Slowly, she sat. Elder Rowan spoke next, voice heavy with dread. Hunter, if you refuse them, they'll destroy us. The Ironblood sect has 3 golden core elders and over 200 core formation cultivators. We have Arya and perhaps a dozen foundation establishment disciples who can hold a sword properly. This isn't a fight we can win. I know. Then what are you planning? Arya demanded. Because it sounded like you just agreed to become their puppet. Hunter looked at them both, then stood and walked to the window. Outside, disciples were training. Children were playing. Normal people living normal lives, unaware that their entire future had just been decided by a man in crimson robes with a smile like poison. I'm not refusing them, Hunter said quietly. And I'm not accepting them. I'm buying time. 2 weeks isn't time. It's barely enough too. It's enough. Hunter turned back to face them. In 2 weeks, I can't make us strong enough to fight the Ironblood sect directly. But I can make us valuable enough that destroying us would cost more than controlling us is worth. I can build leverage. And when that contract jade arrives, I can twist it. Elder Rowan frowned. Contract jades are bound by sect law. The terms are usually non-negotiable. Usually. But they still have to be worded precisely. Loopholes exist. Ambiguities can be exploited. And if I'm clever, if I can add just the right clauses, suggest just the right modifications under the guise of naive enthusiasm, I might be able to turn their collar into a shield. Arya studied him with those sharp eyes. You have a plan. The beginning of one. But I need help. Arya, I need you to accelerate combat training for our best disciples. Not just technique drills. Real tactical scenarios. Small unit coordination. Defensive formations. Make them good enough that losing them would hurt any sect that tried to poach them. That's a month's worth of work minimum. You have 2 weeks. Make it work. She nodded slowly. Hunter turned to Elder Rowan. I need a complete inventory of every technique, every cultivation manual, every piece of knowledge the clan possesses. Especially anything unique or rare. Things the Ironblood sect might want access to. We don't have much that a major sect would consider valuable. Then we'll create value. Trust me. Rowan hesitated, then nodded. Hunter took a breath. And I need both of you to keep doing what you've been doing. Act worried but resigned. Let people think I'm being forced into this. The more the Ironblood sect believes they have the upper hand, the less carefully they'll examine the details. This is insane, Arya said. But there was something in her voice that wasn't quite disbelief. Almost like hope. You really think you can outmaneuver a major sect? No. But I think I can make them underestimate me long enough to build something they can't easily tear down. He didn't mention the ring. Didn't mention the real source of his confidence. But he felt it on his finger, warm and patient, waiting. That night, Hunter worked. He started with the disciples. Not all of them, spreading resources too thin would accomplish nothing. But the 10 most talented, the ones with real potential who'd been held back by lack of proper training and materials. He pulled them aside one by one with carefully crafted excuses, gave them refined pills disguised as gifts from a grateful merchant, provided cultivation advice drawn from the ring's knowledge while pretending it came from old manuals he'd discovered. Within 3 days, 2 of them broke through to Foundation establishment. 2 more advanced an entire stage. The rest improved enough that their progress would be noticed. Next came the formations. The Cole clan's defensive arrays were ancient and degraded, barely functional. Hunter couldn't rebuild them completely in 2 weeks, that would require master formation specialists and resources they didn't have. But he could upgrade key components. Refine formation flags. Purify spirit stones. Strengthen critical junctions. He worked in the dead of night, alone, channeling energy through the ring until exhaustion made his vision swim. Each night he collapsed into bed barely able to move. Each morning he woke and did it again. The ring hummed against his finger, drawing on his chi, his stamina, his will. Some nights he wondered if it would drain him completely. If he'd wake up one morning to find himself a husk, everything consumed by the artifact's endless hunger for refinement. But every morning he woke stronger. The ring didn't just take. It gave back. Slowly. Subtly. Refining his own cultivation as it refined everything else. By the end of the first week, Hunter had reached Foundation Establishment 7th stage. His chi flowed cleaner than it ever had. His techniques came easier. And when he demonstrated a defensive formation for the elders, Elder Ming, the clan's formation specialist, stared at him like he'd grown a second head. Where did you learn this? Ming demanded. Old manuals. I've been studying in my spare time. This is golden core level work. You're telling me you taught yourself. I'm telling you it works. Test it if you don't believe me. They tested it. The formation held against attacks that should have shattered it. Ming went pale and stopped asking questions. The contract jade arrived on the 8th day. Elder Shen delivered it personally, accompanied by another display of overwhelming force. This time Hunter received him in the main hall with Arya, Elder Rowan, and 3 other senior elders present. Witnesses. Documentation. Everything formal and recorded. Shen placed the jade on the table between them. It was about the size of a fist, deep crimson, covered in intricate script that glowed faintly with binding power. Standard Ironblood sect contract, he said. Read it carefully. Once you infuse your chi and accept the terms, the binding becomes permanent. You'll have full access to outer disciple resources, with fast-track advancement to honorary elder status upon completion of your first assignment. Hunter picked up the jade, channeling just enough chi to activate the display. Text flowed through the air, dense legal language that would take hours to parse completely. But Hunter had prepared for this. He'd spent nights studying contract law, examining old sect agreements stored in the clan archives, learning the standard formats and common structures. And he'd found the gaps. This is very generous, Hunter said, infusing his voice with naive enthusiasm. The resource allocation alone is incredible. But I notice the loyalty oath is quite broad. It says I must prioritize sect interests above all others. Does that include my duties to the Cole clan? The Cole clan will be considered an extension of Ironblood interests, Shen said smoothly. There's no conflict. Of course. But just to be clear, if I could suggest a small modification, Purely for clarity, you understand, perhaps we could specify that sect interests means actions that directly benefit the Ironblood sect's strategic goals, rather than any general interpretation? That way there's no ambiguity if situations arise where my clan duties and sect duties overlap. Shen's smile didn't waver, but something flickered in his eyes. That seems unnecessary. Oh, I'm sure it is. I'm probably overthinking it. It's just, I'm new to this kind of formal agreement, and I want to make sure I understand my obligations perfectly. Wouldn't want to accidentally violate terms through misunderstanding, you know? He kept his tone light. Uncertain. Like a young cultivator overwhelmed by complicated politics and trying to navigate carefully. Like someone who didn't fully grasp what he was asking for. Shen studied him for a long moment. Then nodded. A reasonable clarification. I'll have the scribes adjust that clause. Thank you, Elder Shen. And here, in Section 7, it mentions resource sharing. The Cole clan would provide all discovered treasures and techniques to the sect for evaluation. That's standard, I assume? Completely standard. Right. Though I wonder, and again, this is probably my inexperience showing, but shouldn't there be something about fair compensation? I mean, if we discover something valuable, surely the sect would want to provide appropriate rewards to encourage continued cooperation? Otherwise it might seem like, well, not quite a partnership so much as. He trailed off deliberately, looking embarrassed, like he'd almost said something rude. Shen's expression remained pleasant, but his eyes had gone very cold. You drive a hard bargain for someone accepting an invitation, young Master Cole. Oh no, I'm not bargaining. I'm just trying to understand. This is such an incredible opportunity, I want to make sure I honor it properly. If I'm going to represent the Cole clan within the Ironblood sect, I need to ensure the terms protect both parties fairly. Surely the sect appreciates thorough attention to detail? Another long silence. Then Shen smiled, and this time it almost looked genuine. Almost. You're smarter than you pretend to be. Hunter kept his expression innocent. I'm sorry? No, you're not. Shen leaned back. Fine. We'll add a compensation clause. Fair market value for any treasures or techniques, evaluated by neutral third parties. And we'll clarify the loyalty oath language. But understand this, young Master Cole, the Ironblood sect does not make these accommodations lightly. We're bending our standard contract because we see potential in you. Don't make us regret that flexibility. The threat hung in the air like smoke. Of course, Elder Shen. I deeply appreciate the sect's generosity. Over the next 3 days, the contract was revised. Each change was small. Each modification seemed reasonable in isolation. But together, they shifted the entire structure of the agreement from outright servitude to something closer to genuine partnership. The loyalty oath became bounded by specific circumstances rather than absolute. The resource sharing terms included compensation and right of first refusal rather than automatic forfeiture. The territorial clauses acknowledged Cole clan autonomy within their existing borders. And, most critically, Hunter managed to insert a review clause that would allow renegotiation of terms after 1 year based on demonstrated mutual benefit and changing circumstances. It wasn't perfect. The Ironblood sect still had massive leverage. But it was survivable. And it bought time. When the final version arrived, Elder Rowan examined it with the intensity of a man reading his own death warrant. Slowly, his expression shifted from dread to cautious surprise. This is actually not terrible, he said quietly. It's still a binding agreement with a major sect, which carries inherent risks. But these modifications, Hunter, how did you convince them to agree to all this? I acted like an idiot who didn't know what he was asking for, Hunter replied. Let them think I was nervous and overeager rather than calculating. People give you more when they think you don't realize what you're getting. Arya shook her head slowly. You're terrifying sometimes. You know that? I'm not terrifying. I'm careful. Same thing. The acceptance ceremony was scheduled for the 14th day. Hunter spent the 13th night making final preparations, refining one last batch of items, strengthening one last formation, and meeting with every key member of the clan to ensure they understood the plan. When I'm at the sect, you're going to be under scrutiny, he told Arya in his quarters. They'll watch for signs of weakness. Signs they can exploit. Don't give them any. Keep training the disciples. Keep improving our defenses. And keep pretending this whole arrangement was forced on us, that we're resigned but not happy. That last part won't be hard, Arya said dryly. I'm not happy. I know. But we're alive. And in a year, if we play this right, we'll be strong enough that the Ironblood sect will need us more than we need them. You can't possibly believe that. Hunter met her eyes. 3 months ago, I was the weakest disciple in the compound. Now I'm young master, and I just negotiated contract terms with a major sect. Don't tell me what's possible. Something shifted in Arya's expression. Not quite belief. But not quite disbelief either. If you die at that sect, I'm going to be very angry with you. Noted. She left. Hunter sat alone in the dark, feeling the ring pulse against his finger, and allowed himself one moment of honest fear. He was walking into the heart of a major sect. Surrounded by cultivators who could kill him without effort. Bound by a contract that, despite his modifications, still gave them enormous power over his life. And he had to maintain his secrets while navigating politics that could turn deadly in an instant. This was insane. But it was also the only path forward. Hunter closed his eyes and began to meditate, drawing chi through his meridians, letting the ring refine and purify until his cultivation stabilized at the peak of Foundation Establishment 7th stage. Just a little more, and he'd break through to 8th. Then 9th. Then core formation. But that would take time he didn't have. For now, he had to be smart instead of strong. Had to survive by being underestimated. The ceremony took place at dawn in the Cole clan's main courtyard. Elder Shen arrived with his entourage, and this time half the compound turned out to watch. Hunter stood at the center in formal robes, the contract jade held in both hands. The binding ritual was simple. Channel chi into the jade. Accept the terms. Let the contract seal itself into your cultivation base. Once completed, breaking the agreement would cripple your cultivation or kill you outright, depending on the severity of the violation. Hunter took a breath. And channeled his chi. The jade flared brilliant crimson, and suddenly Hunter felt the contract inscribing itself into his very being. Lines of binding force wrapped around his meridians, his core, his soul. It didn't hurt, exactly. But it felt wrong. Like chains made of light and obligation. The modifications he'd insisted on were there. He could feel them. Little gaps in the binding. Small flexibilities. Not freedom, but not quite slavery either. It would have to be enough. The light faded. Elder Shen smiled. Welcome to the Ironblood sect, Honorary Elder Cole. We look forward to a long and mutually beneficial relationship. Hunter bowed. I will serve the sect's interests to the best of my ability. They both knew he meant the exact opposite.